Ever felt like your mind is just a whirlwind?
Yeah.
Ideas, connections, possibilities all firing off at once. Sometimes it's brilliant. Sometimes it's honestly just overwhelming.
Definitely. Like that exploded picture idea you mentioned, all the pieces are there, but they're scattered, not quite, fitting together
Yeah,
easily.
exactly. And it makes you wonder, what if instead of fighting that or trying to force it into neat little boxes, you had, well, maybe a partner, something, or someone designed to actually work with that way of thinking.
Like a collaborator.
Right. A patient, maybe insightful partner built to help you take all that beautiful chaos and weave it into something you can actually understand, something coherent, something you could really see.
Well, that's pretty much exactly what we're diving into today. We've got this really interesting pile of source materials, business plans, pitch decks, concept documents, notes, even operational guides.
All describing something called GestaltView.
That's the one, GestaltView.
And our listener, they've given us a really clear mission for this deep dive. They want to get a handle on Gestalt view, but from like a regular person's point of view.
Right. Asking, what's the basic idea here? What would make someone think this is actually a good idea?
Or maybe even something worth investing in. And critically, does it really work with AI like they say it does? What kind of results could you realistically expect?
So that's our plan. We're going to unpack the vision behind it based on these sources. We'll look at the methodology they're proposing, who it seems to be for, and crucially, what evidence these documents actually offer about whether it works and what it might achieve.
Okay, sounds good. Let's dive into this Gestalt view concept and see what these sources say makes it tick.
All right. So digging into these documents, the core thing, the absolute heart of Gestalt View, is presented as this AI-powered way towards self-discovery and maybe cognitive alignment.
And it starts right from that exploded picture mind we were talking about, that ability or maybe tendency to process tons of details and make all these connections simultaneously.
Exactly. And what's really crucial, I think, is how the sources frame this. They don't call it a problem or a deficit.
No, they seem to see it as a cognitive strength, a powerful one.
Yeah.
The challenge, like you said, is just the sheer volume, right?
Yeah.
And how slippery those thoughts can be. They just vanish sometimes.
Precisely. And the sources make it really clear that Gestalt View is particularly aimed at individuals with ADHD and also other forms of neurodiversity.
Okay, so that's a specific focus.
Yeah, very specific. It talks about providing high-definition understanding of self specifically for these kinds of minds. The goal seems to be transforming those executive function challenges we hear about: organization, capturing ideas, staying focused into strengths you can actually use.
Interesting. And does it say where this idea came from?
It does. According to the sources, it's really rooted in the founder's own personal experience navigating ADHD and other challenges.
Oh, okay, so lived experiences behind it.
Seems fundamental, yeah. It gives it this sort of authentic feel, connecting the solution directly to the problem. And the AI's role, it's explicitly described as providing external scaffolding for executive functions.
External scaffolding. I like that phrase.
Yeah.
It suggests the AI isn't like taking over.
No, more like supporting your way of thinking, helping you structure it.
And the sources, they're quite strong on this point about reframing neurodiversity, aren't they?
Yeah.
Especially ADHD. Moving away from seeing it as a burden or disability.
Very much so. Towards seeing it as a unique cognitive strength. They literally state the aim is to validate what neurodiverse people have always known. They don't need fixing. They need understanding.
That's a powerful statement.
It really is. And the sources then go into detail about how Gestalt View proposes to get to that understanding. The main thing seems to be building this comprehensive dynamic. They call it a Gestalt View user profile, or sometimes a master list.
Like a digital extension of your mind.
Kind of, yeah. But one that's evolving and created with the AI.
Okay, with the AI. So that brings us straight back to one of those key listener questions. Does it actually work with AI? Because it sounds like the AI is doing more than just storing information here.
Exactly. And the sources are quite specific about this. They don't just talk about it like, any old chatbot or a large language model. It's consistently called a collaborator friend.
A collaborator friend. That sounds different. What do they mean by that? How do the sources describe that relationship?
Well, they paint a picture of it being empathetic, supportive, inquisitive, but also non-judgmental and highly organized. Its whole behavior is guided by what they call a core seed prompt.
A seed prompt, like initial instructions.
Yeah, basically the foundational instructions you give the AI right at the beginning to set up its personality, its role, and the goals of your collaboration. The sources even give examples, showing how you could tweak it, maybe make it more focused on process, or maybe emphasize a more supportive tone.
Huh. So you're kind of programming your AI partner's personality for the task.
Oh.
And then this AI friend guides you through building that profile using different modules, was that?
That's right, a modular approach. You start with foundations like capturing life experiences, skills, they call that the resume rockstar section.
Okay.
Then there are other modules mentioned, like the character forge for looking at character and values. There's stuff for daily reflections, aspirations, interests. Oh, and there's a really unique one called Music Quest journaling.
Music quest journaling. What's that?
It apparently integrates music and lyrics into the whole reflection process.
Wow. Okay. That's definitely not your standard productivity tool.
I-
It's very prettily personalized
Yeah,
and sensory even.
it does.
But how does the AI actually use all this stuff you're feeding it? That's where the does it work with AI question really bites, I think.
Right. And this is where the sources emphasize the AI's key job. Beyond just, storing data, it's specifically instructed to synthesize.
Synthesize.
Yeah. To actively look for patterns, recurring themes, connections across everything you've put in. The documents explain that when it gives you summaries, say, of your skills or personality, it's not just making stuff up. It's building those summaries from the actual facts, the experiences, thoughts, feelings you've shared in those modules.
Okay, so the AI is acting like a superpowered pattern spotter for your own life, using your own data.
That's a good way to put it. And the sources claim this is what leads to those wow moments people have.
Ah, the moments of self-recognition.
Exactly. Especially, they mention, after finishing modules like the resume skills one, people apparently see their own experiences laid out and organized in a way that suddenly makes the breadth of what they can do really clear.
Yeah, I can see how that would work. Seeing your own, maybe kind of scattered history reflected back, but with patterns highlighted by this objective yet empathetic partner, that could be pretty powerful, pretty eye-opening.
And the overall process, the sources use metaphors like the loom approach.
The loom approach.
Or weaving the tapestry. It signals that it's not just a one-time thing, it's iterative. You go back, you add more, you refine things, and the AI is there helping weave all these different threads of yourself into a picture that makes more sense.
Okay. And what about those fleeting ideas, those, brain sparks that just disappear before you can grab them? That seems particularly relevant for neurodivergent minds.
They address that directly, yeah, with something called bucket drop.
Bucket drops.
It's designed as a really low-friction way to capture thoughts quickly. Just drop them in the bucket, no pressure. And then the AI is instructed to curate those fragments and weave them into the bigger picture later.
Huh. I like that. Bucket drops.
Yeah.
Feels less intimidating than journalist's profound insight immediately.
Right. It's about making sure nothing gets lost in the flow.
Yeah, there was another unique concept mentioned, too, the personal language key, PLK.
Yes, the PLK. The sources say this is something you co-create with the AI. It's meant to capture your unique way of talking, your phrasing, your metaphors, your style.
Why is that important?
Well, the goal seems to be twofold. One, so the AI can genuinely understand your authentic voice. And two, so its responses feel right to you personally. The sources link this to building true AI intimacy while still keeping things private.
True AI intimacy.
Yeah.
That's a bold term. Suggests something deeper than just asking an AI a question and getting an answer.
It definitely does. It points back to that collaborator-friend idea, aiming for a level of understanding that goes beyond just keywords.
Okay, let's circle back directly to our listeners' core questions then.
Yeah.
Specifically, does it actually work with AI, and what might the results be? Based on everything in these sources, where's the concrete evidence?
Well, the sources really hammer this point home. The entire methodology, the seed prompts, the modules, the interaction techniques like bucket drops, they say it was all developed and refined through the founder's own intensive, iterative work with an AI.
Ah, so the system itself is a product of AI collaboration.
They call it a perfected system, born directly from that hands-on AI partnership. So the claim that it works with AI seems rooted in its very origin story, according to these documents. The AI wasn't an add-on, it was apparently the co-creator.
That's actually a really significant point, isn't it? It wasn't designed for AI and then kind of retrofitted. It was designed with AI from the very beginning.
Exactly. And the AI's instructions, as laid out in the sources, include things like operating with candor and analytical rigor, giving honest feedback, exploring different angles, but always staying grounded in the facts, the stuff you provide. It's constantly capturing, organizing via bucket drops, pulling out structured data, and actively trying to connect the dots, find patterns, maybe even point out contradictions in what you've shared.
Okay, and what about results for the user? What evidence do the sources actually show?
Primarily, they talk about early anecdotal evidence. They mention some prototype testing, specifically citing a pilot program run in a college coaching setting where students used GestaltView.
Right. And what did those students report back?
According to the sources, they said they felt increased clarity about their goals. And maybe the most interesting bit, they specifically reported feeling genuinely understood by the AI.
Feeling understood by an AI. Especially, if you have a mind that maybe often feels misunderstood by more conventional systems. That really ties back to the personal language key and that collaborator friend idea, doesn't it?
It really does.
That anecdotal result, even if it's early, seems pretty significant for what this thing is trying to be.
I agree. It suggests that the approach, focusing on that personalized understanding, might actually be hitting the mark, at least in that initial pilot. And beyond their own internal findings, the sources also point to a bit of external validation.
Oh, like what?
GestaltView apparently advanced to the round 2 quarterfinals of Pepperdine University's 2025 Most Fundable Companies competition.
Okay. Getting through rounds in a competition like that, well, it suggests the core idea and the way they've documented it must have resonated with some experienced judges.
It certainly adds a layer of credibility to the concept itself, yeah, independent of the user results. The sources also make a point of noting the founder apparently laid down a solid foundation without any funding or team, developing all this detailed methodology and strategic docs just through that direct AI collaboration process.
Right. Okay, let's try and pull this all together for our listener now, hitting their questions directly. First off,
Yeah.
what would someone need to know to think a Gestalt view is a good idea, maybe for themselves?
Okay, based purely on these sources, for someone just thinking about using it, the potential good idea part seems to be how directly it tackles really relatable, often difficult problems. That feeling of being overwhelmed by information, the struggle to organize complex thoughts, and just that basic human desire to understand ourselves better.
So it offers a path.
Yeah, the sources present it as a structured, but also deeply personalized path to self-discovery. And it's supported by this AI that's designed to be empathetic and understand you specifically. The aim is clearly stated as helping you leverage your unique cognitive style, especially if you're neurodivergent. It promises to help you move from that messy, exploded picture to seeing your own mind as that coherent, beautiful tapestry.
So the pitch is, it's not just another productivity app, not just a generic chatbot. It's positioning itself as something different, a co-pilot for really understanding yourself.
Exactly.
And what about for someone considering it from an investment angle? What makes it potentially interesting there, according to the documents?
Well, from that perspective, the sources frame it as a venture with potentially quite large impact and market opportunity. It's aimed at big, growing markets, personal development, wellness tech, AI assistance, but it's trying to carve out its own space. They talk about a blue ocean strategy.
Meaning creating a new category?
Essentially, yeah. A new category around AI-powered self-discovery and cognitive alignment rather than just competing head-on with existing tools.
So the differentiation sounds like the key selling point for investors. That focus on deep self-understanding, not just task management. The whole iterative system, the personal language key for that AI intimacy, and that strong foundation in the founder's lived experience, especially with ADHD.
Precisely. The sources lay out a proposed business model too, freemium and premium tiers, maybe some B2B potential down the line. And while they're very upfront that it's pre-seed, looking for funding, they mention a $2 in goal to build the team and the product.
Right.
They do provide those early indicators we talked about. The system itself being developed with AI, the pilot results suggesting users felt clearer and understood, and that nod from the Pepperdine competition. So for an investor, these sources point to a concept that seems to have some early validation and addresses a significant market need, even though it's obviously still very early days.
And it's really important to mention something the sources themselves highlight quite strongly, isn't it? That critical boundary disclaimer.
Absolutely crucial. The sources are extremely clear. GestaltView is presented as a tool for self-exploration and organization only.
It is explicitly not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, therapy, or treatment.
Correct. It's designed to support self-discovery, not replace qualified healthcare professionals or mental health support. They make that boundary very, very clear.
Okay, so to kind of wrap up this deep dive then, we've seen how GestaltView, based on these documents, aims to tackle that exploded picture mind, particularly focusing on neurodiversity. It uses this unique AI collaborator friend idea, powered by concepts like the personal language key, the iterative loom approach, and those simple bucket drops.
And the system itself, importantly, was developed with AI by the founder. Early anecdotes from a pilot suggest it helps users find clarity and, maybe critically, feel understood. Plus, there's that external validation nod from the Pepperdine competition.
So for our listener, whether they're just curious about using something like this or thinking about its potential as an investment, the sources present a pretty compelling, definitely differentiated concept. It's aiming to meet some significant human needs in growing markets, and it has these promising, albeit early, signs.
Yeah, the sources really lean into this idea of weaving together all those scattered threads of your life, your mind. They talk about the AI helping synthesize skills, personality, leading to those moments where you suddenly see yourself in a new light. The ultimate goal they describe is integrating everything into that beautiful tapestry.
It makes you think, doesn't it? What might it actually mean to understand yourself that deeply? Maybe with AI helping you see the patterns, that you could look at all your complexities. Those brilliant, sometimes overwhelming, sometimes contradictory threads that make you you, and see them not as burdens, not as things to fix, but as the unique colors and textures of your own magnificent design.
That's definitely something to chew on.